Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, joined by the hardest working man in show business,
Right.
my tag team partner, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's up, man?
What's going on, Deremy, man? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. It's good to baseball season's going, basketball playoffs are going. This is I know
NHL
like
playoffs.
NHL
NHL
playoffs.
playoffs. Look at
No,
that's the best playoff.
I've watched multiple games.
There you go.
I've watched multiple. YouTube TV has the multi-view.
Yes,
You get both.
that's the shit. Yeah.
So I was watching both of them. So no, I'm definitely I love this time of year, like that March Madness into the NBA and NHL playoffs and baseball's getting going.
Right. NFL
This
draft. When this drops, is NFL draft day.
NFL draft day, yeah, exactly. So it's just a lot of things happening that make it a fun time.
Yeah.
But I feel because we've had so many different things, NBA playoffs going, NHL playoffs, baseball's here, baseball's going. Been fun to see, like just going to the ballpark myself a couple times. I don't know if you've gone yet, but
not yet. No, I will though.
Yeah, so it's just been good. But getting ready for different anniversaries this year. I saw that in May, it'll be 35 years since the great Michael Jack Schmidt retired from the game. Good old Mike Schmidt, and someone who I have been foaming at the mouth, Jose, waiting to talk about with you on this show. And I know you've kind of been feeling the same way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think April 18th is when he hit his 500th home run or something like that. Or I think it was. So yeah, he's got a couple anniversaries, this year. And it's Michael Jack Schmidt. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know what else we can say about that. If you're anywhere in the Philly area, surrounding, cities, states, and stuff like that, man, like, Mike Schmidt is the man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's, I can remember Mike Schmidt as I was a little kid, man, that name. And I remember my parents used to talk about him. Like, it was just, he was the big deal, and he still is a big deal. The greatest third baseman of all time. And we were talking beforehand, Deremy, and it's like, it's not even a debate. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't argue with me, and anyone with that about, him being the best third baseman of all time. And it's just like, man, like, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Deremy, and with all our listeners, man. And it's just kind of like, talk about what happened with Mike Schmidt and everything that happened in there was a lot in his career. You know what I'm saying? I'll say it like that. And I'm excited to dive into a lot of that stuff.
Well, he for all the great things he did on the field, he had a tumultuous relationship
that's a good word,
with the Philadelphia media, Philadelphia fans. A lot of controversies and difficulties for someone who on the field made it look so easy. And Jose, if I were to throw out this player has 8 home run titles, led the league in on-base percentage 3 times, 10 Gold Gloves, led the league in RBIs 4 times, a 3-time MVP. Like, if you say these things, you're thinking it's got Willie Mays, Hank Aaron. Who is this guy? Man, is that Mantle? No, it's Mike Schmidt. Only Babe Ruth has led their league in the home run title more times. He did it 14 times, and that was in the dead ball era and, all that stuff. So Mike Schmidt, no one's even close to him. 8 times led the National League in home runs. In the 1980s, that was a really odd time in baseball, a lot of different changes. And through these changes from the AstroTurf and the growing role of like relief pitchers, the home run ball really went down.
Yeah.
And only 12 guys hit 40 home runs throughout the entire decade. Mike Schmidt's the only one to do it twice.
Yeah, you could put a lot of his numbers up, and they're, they definitely stand out. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're eye opening, as they say, man. And it's just like, I think he's the only 3-time MVP to have more than 8 Gold Gloves. I think Bonds has 8, but Bonds got like 1 million MVPs. But everyone else, if you look, there's been 10 players that have 3 MVPs or more. Everyone else, and a couple of those guys like DiMaggio and all that, this is before Gold Gloves and all that. But I think officially like Rawlings started that at 57 or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
but no one is close. Like you got guys like Trout. Trout has, I don't even think Trout has a Gold Glove. I don't know. Albert Pujols has like one. You know, Alex Rodriguez has like two. Like this dude has 3 MVPs, 10 Gold Gloves, and you're just talking about like all the home run power and everything like that he produced, all those RBIs and stuff. Hit like 267 career, 270, something like that. This dude, man, like was your quintessential all around like great player, like amazing player, you know, and in a time where it's not like now that third base position is like two guys maybe that you can talk about that really stand out, and then probably some younger guys that I don't even know their names, but you know, at a time where third base was like a premier position, you know what I'm saying? Like, and especially defensively, if you to win 10 Gold Gloves at third base, man, like that's hard to do, you know, and he did that, and he did that in a way, and we'll get into this, man. Like he did it with like such like you mentioned it earlier too, Deremy. Like it just looked effortless. Like he was so silky smooth out there, man. It was just he was. I can't imagine, man. I wish I had the opportunity to watch him play his whole career. Like you know what I'm saying. Like he's one of those guys. I wish I can just go back and watch. And but man, that's all around greatness there.
No, absolutely, all around. And, I think what I loved and what my dad showed me when he was showing me like old Mike Schmidt, highlights when I was really young was the way he played defense and the way that when I think of that barehanded grab,
Oh
he's the
man,
first person I think of. And just
yeah,
watching him and to make third baseman, I know Brooks Robinson, when he comes probably defensively, he's
yeah.
the GOAT third
He,
baseman,
right. That's
you
16
know.
Gold Gloves right there, man.
Yeah, so defensively, he's the GOAT third, but not all around. All around, that's Michael Jack Schmidt. But just to me, Brooks Robinson had the amazing like dives. He would dive for
Yeah,
these, balls. But I think of Mike Schmidt, it's that barehanded grab. He's charging up that third base line and just flinging it to first base and getting it right in time every time. It seems he just has something with him. And I think the funny part is it looks so cool and calm, but really who he was a big time anxiety and
yeah,
worrier. And I find it interesting that the two guys who were his biggest mentors for his career early on, Dick Allen,
yeah.
and in that middle part it was Pete Rose.
Yeah, absolutely. Dick Allen introduced him to like meditation and stuff like that, I believe, and which is always a good way, obviously, to kind of calm a lot of that anxiety and things like that. And if you can calm that anxiety down, like imagine like your approach to the game, like you're going to feel much more calmer and able to do your thing out there, which he obviously started to do, and then it's especially in a city like this, like in Philadelphia, where and we'll get into this too, like that it can be so critical and the media is so tough, right? And to try to do all that by being like the best player on this team, for pretty much over a decade, it's hard to do. And he did it again, like he did it with so much grace out there, and just that it was just beautiful to watch. And baseball is like a very poetic sport, man. And because you can have guys who have all these dive like Ozzie Smiths and things like that, like who have all these diving catches and stuff like that. But then you have guys who are so good that they're constantly in like good position that they don't have to do a lot of that stuff, And he was one of these guys that was always in the right position and making all these plays and making some of these plays look very easy compared to like what a lot of these other guys were doing. And then you talked about like the shift in like AstroTurf and stuff like that. Imagine playing on in Vet Stadium on that AstroTurf, 95 degrees, which is probably like 110 on that field, and
Right.
them rockets coming at you at third base with no like they're not stopping. You know what I'm saying? Like there's nothing to slow it down. That's amazing stuff, man.
Absolutely. And I think I wanted to point out because the two mentors, only because to your point, we, probably a lot of people don't know, and maybe this will be a future episode, who
Right.
knows,
Yeah.
but how Dick Allen and the scrutiny he went through, which was before, Mike Schmidt
Yeah.
came on the team. And Dick Allen went to the other teams and came back. So he knew
Yep.
how to handle that Philadelphia pressure. And then I think, Pete Rose came in and helped him give him confidence, being like, "Hey, man, you're the best player on the field. Every day, you're the best player. They're worried about you." And really, you can see Mike's game pump up even more with that too.
Yeah,
But both guys, for one guy for a reason that wasn't that not up to him, is unfair. The other guy for his own self doing. These are two of the best players not in the Hall of Fame. Pete
absolutely.
Rose and Dick Allen, who were mentors for Mike Schmidt.
Yeah, like and just imagine like the confidence you have to get when you get a guy like Pete Rose, who, I mean, we can talk about off the field stuff, but on the field, like the dude's a Hall of Famer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's a great, great player. And having him in your ear telling you, like, no, you're the best player, dude. You're the best player. You're the best player. Like constantly, all the time. Like for a guy like Mike Schmidt, who again, like we touched on like the anxiety and things like that, but he was also a confident dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like let's keep it real. Like he was borderline brash and cocky, I think. Which is good. I love that shit. So but if you have a guy like that, a Hall of Fame, like at that point, Pete Rose came to the Phillies, he was already a Hall of Famer. Like telling you, man, like, no, like let's do this, you're the best. And that's going to give you confidence. And then again, we saw what happened with the Phillies around that time. So it makes sense to me.
No, absolutely. And Jose, I wanted to. This is something that's been kind of on my mind getting ready for this episode. And I know I'm going to use a comparison, and it's different sports, but hear me out. When I look at in the NFL, a lot of people call Jerry Rice the greatest player of all time. You look at his numbers, and that's definitely there. But also, because there's really no dispute as who the greatest wideout is, it's Jerry Rice, and I think that's what really helps him. And I'm looking at it in baseball. I don't know if there's another position that I'm like, oh, hands down, they're the greatest in their position, the way I look at Mike Schmidt in third base. And I don't know if that's true or not, or you think if there's someone else that you can think of.
Not really, man. I would say the one player probably, maybe, if he would have started off at third base like his entire career, maybe like A-Rod or somebody like that. But even like steroid stuff later on is going to bring that down a little bit, bring that debate down and have him closer to Mike Schmidt. But maybe A-Rod. I don't know. I was thinking like it's funny because again, like the 500 home run, people were talking about that like online and social media and stuff like that. And I had made a comment like, "Oh, the greatest third baseman ever," and someone responded. It was like, "Oh, I think Aaron Nola and Chipper Jones, guys like that, or no, Machado, they'll catch up to Mike Schmidt." And I was like, "No way! Like, there's no way." And I know Aaron Nola, like he has 10 Gold Gloves, I believe it is now, or 8, something like that. But this is now where there's no third baseman. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's the only really, him and Machado are like the only real great third baseman at this point in time. And so no, I don't really. There's
Well,
like one and then the far second.
that's what I mean. So I think you're right. If A-Rod played his whole career there, but if you do what A-Rod's time at third base, which is impressive that he's one of the great third basemen of all time, and he didn't play that for a good part of his career. But he's still third base time to third base with Schmidt, far behind, Mike Schmidt, like for their time at third base. I think, I don't know if there's another position on the, like even with Johnny Bench, I don't think he's like as much of a slam dunk as like the greatest catcher of all time,
Right.
the way Mike Schmidt is a slam dunk at third baseman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because there's arguments to be made. Like you have guys like Pudge Rodriguez, like you know what I'm saying, like guys like that you can be like, oh no, I think he's like you'll have a certain because people I know people like defensively. I know Johnny Bench was a great all around player too, but like they'll look at Pudge defensively, and that for some fans that like can elevate people. You know what I'm saying, like, but yeah, they like I can have an you can make an argument for every position. You know what I'm saying? Like every single position, especially like outfield, there's like tons of arguments there. First base is like how many great first basemen have they been playing in baseball? And but third base, it's like this is Mike Schmidt, and then it's everyone else, and it's like a unanimous kind of like debate.
Well, I say that because I want to, I guess, two questions. First is, can you be underrated if you're called the greatest in your position? Or if, I don't know if you've done this recently, I was looking at a lot of, like, just to get ready, where, and I kind of knew, but where he ranks when you see, like, these ESPN greatest MLB players of all time or all century, whatever. And it's like, he's in the 20s. I've seen really like 20 to 25 around there. So if you're
Yeah,
called a top 20 player, top 25 player in baseball history, can you be underrated still?
you can. You know, especially nowadays where a lot of people don't even. I think the position, like the younger fans, I guess, like even like our age, there. I mean, like you know, that third base position has been it hasn't been really that great. You know, like I'm trying to think. You know, like even when I was really like growing up in baseball, like you got guys like Matt Williams, like you had a bunch of other guys who were like very very good, but like even past that, like past 2000, like throw me some third baseman. Like it's really hard, and I don't know if it's like the position has been devalued. I don't know. I'm not saying I look at that, but I
No,
don't know
no,
if
no.
like a fan,
Yeah, I'm
like
just
as
thinking.
fans, like I don't know if the position has been devalued to a point where it's just like, all right, like you know he was great third baseman, but you know what about like shortstop and like Jeter, like you know what I'm saying, like guys like that, like that. I don't know. I don't know, but I think he's very much underrated because you know when you mention it, you talk about the all time greats. He's at 20 or something. That should not be the case. You know what I'm saying? If you're the number one guy in your position, you should be top 10 all time.
And that's what I think. I think seeing what he did, I don't know why he's not spoken in that hallowed ground, because we all know all sports have them, but baseball to me is one of those that really has it.
Yeah.
Where there's these, you could be a Hall of Famer, but you know these icons of the game. You know their names from like DiMaggio and Ted Williams and Ruth, and you get a Jackie Robinson, Clemente, Aaron and Mays. They're like in that, whoa, that pantheon, like they're just the elite, the iconic players. Mike Schmidt's not on that list, and I'm just confused by that. Like, I feel I can name people who aren't on his level. Great players. Reggie Jackson is to me more mythologized than
Yes.
Mike Schmidt, and Reggie Jackson, Hall of Famer, great player, nowhere near Mike Schmidt in my opinion.
Oh no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And but I guess my question to that is, you know, and and people do this a lot nowadays. It's like, you know, the clutch gene and you know, what have you done in the postseason, things like that. I know early on in Mike Schmidt's career, I know 1980 he won World Series MVP, things like that. Early on in his career, there was some struggles in the postseason. And you know, when we talk about say greats like Barry Bonds, it's like what's the first thing? Obviously, other than steroids and all those numbers, it was postseason play. Postseason play. He always comes up short. Maybe that could have been something that like I don't know holds people back from talking about him from being an all time great. Now, again, like he's had some very good postseasons too. Don't get me wrong. Like, but I know early on there were some struggles there. Maybe that can be the case. I know the Phillies also they had an amazing run in the like mid 70s and then like those early 80s. But after that, like the Phillies were horrible for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't know if it's that. You know what I'm saying? Like that he wasn't in the spotlight more than some of these other guys. And again, I know in the 70s, I mean, they went to three straight NLCSs. You know,
I mean, he
but
appeared in two World Series, won one, world was MVP in one.
right. And that second one,
Um,
they ran into a juggernaut. Like you know what I'm saying? And it was Orioles. So, so
I
I don't.
just, it doesn't make any sense to me where, and I do think the clutch gene is overhyped. It's
Oh
not
yeah, yeah,
true. Like,
absolutely.
well, I can look at, I mean, in that first LCS in '76, he did have a 308 batting average.
Right.
Now the next two were not good. He was .063 and then 200 in the '77 and '78 LCS. But He had a phenomenal 80 World Series. He didn't have a good LCS in 80. He actually struggled big time, and in big situations struggled. But he
Right.
made up for it in the World Series. But I also look at people, and this is where it's wrong, the big home runs he hit to win games in the regular season. In 1980, it's that they have to win the division, and to get to the LCS, they have to go to Montreal, and hey, whoever wins 2 out of 3 is
Yeah.
division champs. That's a playoff series right there, Jose. When you're down
Right.
to, to me, and we all know, and if you're a Philadelphia fan, we all remember Andy Musser's legendary call where Schmidt hits that 2-run shot, and he buries it and puts them ahead to, pretty much wrap up one of the games to win the division to get into the playoffs. Mike
Right.
Schmidt
It's like a playing
had
tournament almost.
pretty much, like, he hit clutch home runs during the season, and he did play big in the 80 World Series to be the MVP. You got to look at him and say he had struggles, but most players do, but
Right.
he didn't choke in all of them.
Right. Like it wasn't a consistent thing. Like I was trying to find things also like to even your question. Like I was earlier when I was kind of looking up some stuff. Like I was trying to find like just spots there. Were like, man, why is this guy like not considered so higher up? And I was reaching here. You know what I'm saying? Like I was like, man, like But again, they made, and this is three straight 76, 77, 78, and then 80. They get to the World Series. So like that's four out of let me see, that's 4 years that they make the NLCS. They lose to the Dodgers, then they lose to the Big Red Machine in '76. Like so, that's not even like even that. It's like man, like you lost to these teams. Like that's
And
understandable. But
playoffs in 81.
right,
And then the LCS, they beat the Dodgers. In 83, he had a good series there, and he didn't really do well in that 83 World Series, but that's still the big stage again. Like Mike Schmidt's there. And remember, it's just a totally different game. Like you
yeah,
saw him, he was always starting at the All-Star game, and
yeah,
that's when the All-Star game, everyone watched the MLB All-Star game back then. So like
yeah,
you got to see him there too. Um, Not all the Pantheon guys have those moments though. Like Ted Williams doesn't have
nope,
the big postseason moments like that. Hank Aaron's not really known for his playoff stuff. Like that doesn't really matter with him. And I'm not saying Schmidt is necessarily better than Hank Aaron or Ted Williams,
right,
but you don't necessarily have to have those moments. I think to stay there. So I just feel when I read something today that said, and obviously I want God forbid, but if Willie Mays passes away before Mike Schmidt, then once Willie Mays passes away, Mike Schmidt will be the best living baseball player. Like the great. He'll take
yeah,
that title.
that's true though. That's 100% true. Yeah, because Willie Mays is they could have been most of them been alive, and he would have still been up there. Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think it goes back to the underrated piece. Like I just look at it like how to me there's no way like what I'm saying like that you can look at this guy as not a top 10 player. Like I just don't. I know some of these numbers now with these guys with like the steroid era and stuff like that have passed him and stuff, but this was a time where 500 home runs was the big deal. He was the fourth youngest, I think, player that gets to reach 500 home runs. I think the other two, like Babe Ruth and like all these other all-time great players as well. Like I mean, like Mount Rushmore type players, and it's still like even him being in that category, right? Only 10 guys again to win 3 or more MVPs. Like 10 guys in a history of baseball, and we know how long baseball has been around. So it's criminal, man. Like how people don't look at this guy. And again, this is no homer type shit right here. Like we're looking at facts here, numbers, what he's done for the game, things like that. Like this is criminal for real.
No, and I do think you brought up an interesting point earlier, where is the third base position devalued? Like, is that what it is? Like, I
I
don't
mean, think
know
about
because
it.
I feel like shortstop, like you said. how is Jeter more in the ethos, the mythologized, than like a Mike Schmidt? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's blasphemy. And I know Jeter
Yeah,
played with the Yankees and won world titles, but Cal Ripken is they're nowhere near Mike Schmidt. Like,
nah,
insane.
it is insane, man. And I just think, man, like, just think about baseball, right? Like, think about some of those positions that when we grew up were like, oh my God, like you're playing left field, like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're playing center field. Like the catcher, I felt like it's been devalued tremendously. When I was growing up, man, if you had a strong arm, you're playing third base or you're catching. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it was a big time position. Just think
Mm-hmm.
about all those catchers like in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like today, name me 5 catchers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's tough to do. Like, I just think there's certain positions now where it's just like, man, if you're good defensively, you're not going to make a ton of errors. Like, you can hit 215, 220, and then you're going to get a roster spot. Like, I think third base is one of them. I think catcher is another one. You know what I'm saying? Like, now it's just like that first baseman, the shortstop, like center field still is always going to be a popular position. But man, like I just and it's been over years with that. To me, that third base position has been devalued.
No, that's an interesting point. And it's funny because you wouldn't think that because it wasn't devalued when Mike Schmidt was playing.
No, no,
So
no.
I wouldn't think that because it gets devalued now that it affects how we view
Right.
positions all time. That's interesting. That's a good point. I never thought of that. But I
Yeah,
wonder
I
if
just
that
think
does
about it
affect it.
also. Right. Like I just think like people talk about like the running back position and stuff like that, like in today's NFL. And I know like this year free agency, like they, some of those guys got paid and stuff, and rightfully so. But when you think about the greatest players, like a lot of people go to the quarterbacks, you know what I'm saying? Like, and they kind of, and I know Jim Brown is still in that conversation. I know Walter is still in that conversation, but there's going to be more quarterbacks that get bumped up there. And I just think it's based off of like the devaluation of that position. And, I think baseball, it's happened in baseball and it's going to continue to happen for certain positions.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's true. Um, yeah, because I'm thinking, I
Just think
still,
about
but
Johnny
maybe
Bench, how great Johnny Bench is. You don't even hear about Johnny Bench. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy to me.
no. And he was somewhat because I'm like, it's John, but I'm like, no, I put Mike Schmidt over Johnny Bench.
Yes, so would I. Like,
You
so would
know,
I. Yes.
because I feel like Johnny Bench, and it does help. I know being on these teams, and
Right.
and and the Big Red Machine, but I'm like, no, I feel like Johnny Bench is talked about still a little bit more than
Yep.
Mike Schmidt. I don't know, and I haven't had MLB Network, so I haven't checked it. Like, is there a Mike Schmidt, documentary? Did the MLB Network do that?
I
Like, I
couldn't
don't
find
think so.
anything. I'll tell you straight out. Like, I was even thinking, man, a 30 for 30 on this dude, like with everything how great of a player he was and everything that he went through in his career, it would be an amazing 30 for 30 type documentary, man. Because if you think about all the stuff that he went through with the fans, with the media, like, and being that great of a player, like most of these guys don't go through that being that great. So it's like it's his career is so interesting, man. Like just if you dive into it, like don't just I know we're doing the episode on this, but if you take time and just kind of really dive into like a lot of the stuff that he went through with the media, with the fan being booed at home, like are you crazy? Like this is Mike Schmidt, like and he reacted to that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes he did it funny with like wearing a wig and stuff like that, but that was later in his career. They were doing this throughout his career, in certain times, not like the entire time, but in certain times. And it's just like, man, like even to this day in Philly sports, it's just like, man, how did y'all treat this dude like that with him being that great? I don't know.
Well, I think he has the double whammy. So, like, to segue into it, where he throughout his career it was respected nationally and slammed locally, and then now I kind of feel it's almost flipped,
Yeah,
and we'll get into it. I still don't think he gets the rightful due he should get in Philly, but it's definitely a lot better. But I feel like now, like nationally, all time, he's getting disrespected, but he's getting better locally. So let's look at it. When we look at the local stuff, it is one of the more bizarre things. Um, Legendary Philadelphia sports writer radio host, NFL Films. Ray Didinger grew up in Philly, but been a pro as sports writer and stuff since
Jerry Diddy's the
1970.
man. That's the man
Just
right there.
awesome. And I remember his book came out in 2022, and he had to rank
Yes.
like the best Philadelphia athlete that he's seen professionally, and he said it was hands down Michael Jack Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he wanted to put Reggie because Ray Diddy covered all the sports, but we think of him for covering the Eagles.
Right.
Wanted to put Reggie there. You think of the people who were in that time frame from 1970. You have a Reggie White, a Bobby Clark, a Bernie Parent, Julius Erving, Allen Iverson, all these, Charles Barkley,
Moses, yeah.
Moses. But the guy was Michael Jack Schmidt. And I think that's interesting, Jose. Like, that should be a slam dunk, but Ray Diddy said it. He was surprised, and other people were surprised by that Mike Schmidt was the best athlete that he's covered in, the almost 55 years of him doing it.
I was surprised too when I saw that, because again, excuse me, I thought he would immediately went to like a football player, but I agree with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, because even those guys that we mentioned, they've had great careers. Like, but I think if you take out maybe Reggie White, because I think Reggie White's the best defensive end of all time, maybe the best defensive lineman of all time. Like, these other guys were all great players, but I don't think they were the best at their position. Maybe Julius at the time, maybe, but you still got Larry Bird, stuff like that playing. So maybe not even that, and Mike Schmidt, I guess, like we've been talking about, has been easily the best third baseman of all time. And even before he retired, he was already the best third baseman of all time, and it's just, it's a Hall of Fame career. Again, is one of the best players at his position. In a historic, like, I know every league has their history and things like that. This is baseball. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and baseball and it's like past and all the numbers and stuff like that are like just, above and beyond any sport, I think, and you have a guy here where he's the best at one of the positions all time.
But my point is that even we said we were surprised he said that, maybe for different reasons, but still, that's shame on Philadelphia right there. He
Absolutely.
should be a lock. Like, it should be like, oh yeah, Mike's just number one. Who's number two?
Right.
Like, how is it that he's still kind of getting overlooked when you sit down and you let it marinate? Of course, Mike Schmidt is the best since 1970. I'll argue this, and I kind of wanted to see what you feel. If you do a pro Philadelphia athlete Mount Rushmore, would you be surprised if anyone of any age if Mike Schmidt is either left off or they're like, it's close, like he's that third or fourth head on the Mount Rushmore? How surprised would you be if like you saw either one of those for Philly Mount Rushmore?
I'd be very surprised, and I honestly think, Deremy, to that point, like, I think if you're like younger than like 45, there'll be people leaving him off. Like, I would say that. I think 100%, I think people would leave him off. Because everybody's like immediately going to go to these other sports now. I think the older generation would probably have him on there, but yeah, he wouldn't be number one. Like, I don't think he would be number one.
I think older generations might leave him off, honestly. I think you're right. More of them would get it right, but I don't think he'd be the lock that he should be.
Right.
Where
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he would be third or fourth.
Yeah, where to me, if I'm going to go, let's not even do 1970 all time. He's the number two lock. I say my number one lock is Wilt Chamberlain, and Mike Schmidt's my number two all time.
Yeah, no, and you're. And Wilt Chamberlain is the only person that's keeping you from being number one. That's understandable, right? Like, he's a like iconic American history type of like person. You know what I'm saying? Like, and but I just think a lot of people wouldn't do that. I think they would immediately. I think they wouldn't even put Wilt. Like, I know a lot of the old heads would, but like it would just be, it would be very interesting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think he's like so totally disrespected, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's insane. Like now the more I'm even talking about it, it's just bothering the shit out of me, man, because it's making me want to like just speak his name. You know what I'm saying? Like and that like he's on the Sunday broadcast for the Phillies. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's still around a little bit. You know what I mean? Like that we always talk about where, you know, guys that get in the media, they kind of stay relevant and then people remember that name and kind of like elevate them a little bit. He's still on the broadcast team with the Phillies. Like it's like once a week, I believe it is, like on the weekends or something like that. But he's still around, and people still don't talk about him a lot.
It's something that I can compare it to was like when we did our episode, Check the Archives on Frank Thomas.
Check him.
Where it's like people would say, for Frank Thomas, first ballot Hall of Famer, yeah. Anyway, but like, so they say a big statement, like, oh, of course, Thomas, Frank, first ballot Hall of Famer, but they wouldn't say like they wouldn't they wouldn't expand on it and being
Right.
like he did this, he did that. They would just like say it, and I feel like Mike Schmidt has that like greatest third baseman ever. So anyway, we're gonna go to shortstop. Like it's like, oh, like you're not talking about what this guy did and what he meant for the game and what he meant, you know, Philadelphia baseball, but baseball in general. Like Mike Schmidt was huge, and it's like his name is there, but it's not talking about how great this guy was and how he's by far the greatest player in franchise history and really was the cornerstone of the greatest, I still believe, the greatest run of team
Yes.
success
I
in
was just thinking
franchise
that.
history.
I was just thinking that, man. Like it's the best stretch. And please understand this. Like if you're not obviously, I mean, I know everybody that listens to our show is not from the Philly area or not a Philly sports fan. Like the Phillies are the most they have the most losses in sports history. Like it's a organization that's just known losing forever. You know what I'm saying? Growing up, the Phillies were terrible when I was growing up. I know by the time you growing up, they were like terrible, and then they got better, obviously. But you know, this mid 70s to like early 80s is the best run they've ever had. You know, I know like the Utley and Howard era was really nice. That was much shorter. You know, this run here that they're going through right now, it's very short still. These guys were great from, you know, he came up, 74 or 74, it was like his breakout season. He came up 72 for a little bit, but 73 was just like his real first year. So you
Mm-hmm.
go like 74, 75, 76, they were really good. You know, the early 80s, obviously two World Series in 3 years. Like that was the run. You know what I'm saying? Like, and by the time 85, they were already done. Like, you know what I'm saying? They were losing 90 games. And then they went on a stretch where they were just horrible, you know. And I don't know if that plays a part in it as well, where there was just a fan base that grew up with the Phillies being really terrible, that they were just like not a lot of interest. I mean, I'm trying to figure this out during this show, but this
No,
was
well,
in his era was the best run this Phillies organization
well,
has ever had.
The Phillies got great. They were popular. The Phillies were a popular draw in
Yeah,
those. If you look at the '70s, you know, you can maybe make a case the Flyers.
yeah,
They're coming off of the back-to-back cups, 74, 75. They go again in 76. The Broad Street Bullies were popular. The Sixers, for as exciting as they were with Dr. J, they were the great traveling road show where they sold out on the road. You couldn't get $4,000 to go to the
yep.
Spectrum back then. So it wasn't the Sixers. The Phillies were it. You
And it
know,
wasn't the
they
Eagles
wasn't the Eagles at that point, not
for
yet.
sure.
No, the Eagles come in the early '80s. They finally get
Yeah,
there, but nah, it was the Phillies. So there was a lot of interest there. Um, One thing I wanted to ask you, we talked about the playoff because there's a few things you can probably try to pick at for why
right. We're
Philadelphia
reaching,
fans,
man. Like we're
yeah,
trying.
were mad at him. Some people say the playoff success or lack of success, but we poked holes at that. One thing I wanted to ask you about is the strikeouts. Now, Mike Schmidt
Yes.
did he was a strikeout guy. He led the league in strikeouts 4 times in his career. So all the numbers I gave, I didn't forget that he was a strikeout guy. He got like 180 something one year.
Yeah, the 180, man. That stuck out. It was 75. He had 180. He led the league in
You know,
strikeouts. One, two, three, almost 4 times. Yeah, 3 times he led
I
the
thought
league
it
in
was four.
strikeouts.
I thought it was 4 times he led it. Is it 3?
In 83, he had 148.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So he was a strikeout guy. And
yeah.
I was thinking about this, like, there's getting when you're the home team, and being I know you've gone to a bunch of games, I've gone to a bunch of games, big games or just regular season. Insert like no one wants to see the fans and the players. No one wants to getting out, no matter what it is. But when you're in a tight spot in a game, it's a crucial situation late in the game and stuff. I feel like any way you get out, whether you pop it up, you strike out, you ground out, the crowd's going, "Oh."
Right.
But if you compare that to like being at a game and it's nothing, second inning, if someone we're home, our team's up to bat, someone grounds out, they pop up. I've seen it where like no one's like wants that, but people kind of like pass by. They're talking, they move on.
Right.
The strikeout, though, no matter what type of situation, is always like the ultimate deflator. It's like, oh, like
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, was that it? Not saying that it's right, but just like he was a strikeout guy, and he struck out a lot, as you said. So how much of that played a factor? And do you think it's right?
Oh, I don't think it's right. You know what I mean? Like, cause again, like he wasn't a big like average guy. Again, he was a career 267 average. He had like 300, I think, one time, and that was like a shortened season. He played like 100 games, so he wasn't a big average guy, right? And but the strikeouts do, it's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Like the strikeouts do stick out. You know what I mean? Especially if you're striking out in a postseason game where it's like runner on second and third, and it's like you have the opportunity to do something and you're the best player, and you strike out. It's just it's not pretty. You know what I'm saying? Like a strikeout is bad. And you're right. Like it could be the first inning, it could be the eighth inning, like ninth inning. It's going to stick out. And when you strike out often, people are going to remember that a lot, because if you look at players today strike out so much, and it's not even like that big of a deal anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, but at this time, it was all about like making contact and moving runners over and stuff like that. Like, you play the game, I guess, the right way, as people would say. So if you got a guy and there's a man on second with one out, like you're supposed to, try to hit it to the right side of the field, move this runner over, maybe whatever. Or if he's on third and there's one out or two outs or one out, and you can just sacrifice fly and bring him in. Like instead you strike out, and then now it's like, you know what I mean? Like fans are going to be able to boo you and things like that. So I think the strikeouts could be a part of it. But even if you think about guys who struck out a lot, do you think about Mike Schmidt? I didn't until I started really looking at this, really looking at his numbers. I never really looked at him as a big strikeout guy.
For me, that was always talked about. Like, so now you're right. For the
Okay.
game all time, he's not the first name that I think about. Like, we look at the major league, guys in history who struck out a lot. I don't go to him first, but that was always the thing because like the naysayers, even he was someone who was highly debated when I was still a kid. Like the older
Right.
generations was
Yep.
still debating. You have people who at that point, this is in the '90s, were proud. Yeah, I booed Schmidt, and they would say it. And then you had like people who loved him, and I came from a family who loved him, but still they would. Everyone had to acknowledge the strikeouts because the people who hated on him would say he always struck out in a big situation, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then people who loved him be like, well, he struck out, but still he did all these things. So yeah, I did. I can't forget that because that's probably the one knock on his resume or like his
Yeah.
overall like talent evaluation.
Yep.
If he wasn't a strikeout guy, you could call him the perfect player.
Yeah, but I mean, every player has something. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, and I would rather have a guy that hit 267 is not a bad average. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No,
and
no.
for a career, and that's not a bad average at all. Plus 500 something home runs, plus 1,500 something RBIs. Like, I and the defensive prowess that he brought to the table as well. Like, I'll take a couple strikeouts. But again, the strikeouts are going to stick out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think the worst thing you could probably do in a strikeout is a double play, right? Like hitting to a double play. But in big moments, if you do strike out, people are going to remember that stuff. That may be a part of it. I don't think the total strikeouts is the part of it. I just think it's certain moments where he did not step up. Because if you look at a guy like Mike Schmidt, you're going to think he's going to always step up, right? He should always step up. At one point he was the highest paid player in the league, like for a couple of years there. Like in a city like Philadelphia, if you're the, like highest paid player, your expectation is going to rise so much. That's just the way this fan base is, Deremy. And I'm not telling you anything new, but it's just the way it is.
No, it's just interesting. I think it doesn't equate to boo a
No,
guy like
absolutely not.
that. But I think the strikeouts, and I think that's why it's interesting, because people would think they'll forget the clutch home runs he's had, and some of these are some of the most memorable games. We look at the Wrigley Field, that when he hit 4 home runs that day, all windy,
Yeah,
or that crazy 23-22
yeah,
game
in
in
Wrigley.
'79. That's like one of the great games in baseball history. Who put him ahead? That was Michael Jack Schmidt. I mean, I don't know if anyone has a more famous 500th home run call than what Harry
Nope.
Kalas did that day in Pittsburgh. Like, it's all these moments to me outweigh just what's going on, and especially when if you look at it, it's Phillies baseball history pre-'76. You have the collapse of '64, which
Yeah,
is one of the worst collapses in sports history. All around that is all this losing baseball. Then you got like the Wheeze kids of 1950, and then you go into 1915 and stuff. Like,
yeah.
it's just so much bad baseball that if this guy, imagine if you're like a 15-year-old kid in 1976, all you really have is just seeing garbage.
Yep.
Like, you watched as like an 11-year-old, Steve Carlton, your team won like 59 games, and one pitcher won like 27 of them. Like, that's
Which is
so
insane.
bad.
Like,
It's
I
just
know.
insane in itself. But you have to be so bad to you have a guy wins almost 30 games and you don't get to 60 wins. Like, that's how bad you were watching baseball.
Yeah.
And then this guy is a corner, and he had good pieces around him. He's the cornerstone of giving you 100 when you go from winning, you can't win 60 to then
To
4 years later.
back 100-win seasons.
Yeah, you get that. Like, you're gonna boo this guy? I'd be like, yo, man, you can strike out all you want. I'm seeing meaningful baseball for the first time in my life. Yes, that's what I'd be doing.
Right. Oh, I would do the same thing. It's like current players, right? Like the current Phillies team is they're on a nice run. I enjoy watching this team. They strike out a lot too, but that's another story. Bryce Harper, 2022, that playoff run. Well, yeah, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
When he went to the World Series, that playoff run, he's good with me. Like, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like what I watched him do there, we did an episode on that. Check the archives. Like
Jacket.
what I watched him do there, I I rarely have seen that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so he gets a pass. Like, if he strikes out in big situations this year, like he's got a pass with me. I'm not gonna like it. He's got a pass. Like, cause that shit he did was just all time greatness. Like, I don't understand that either, Deremy. Like, I don't understand how you can go from a fan base where, and I get really frustrated with my fan base, man. And I know we've had conversations, me and you, Deremy, about this stuff, like on like, there's a difference between passionate and just stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like, it's not a passionate, like, it's not passion. You booing a guy, booing your best player, like, and thinking like that's the right thing to do. Like, no, it's like, it, that's just dumb to me, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think a lot of that is that part too. Like, I just think this fan base thinks it's passionate when it's not, that's not passion to me, man. Like,
Mm-mm.
just utter stupidity, man. So I don't get that either, man. Like, it just blows my mind. All this stuff, man, like that you read about what he went through, man. Like, it's insane to me. It's like, and I'll say this there. I mean, I know you're gonna jump in, but a part of me also thinks, because again, like with baseball and like you have certain guys in this organization who are looked at, you know what I'm saying? I would say a lot of fans will put Utley in that Mount Rushmore before Schmidt sometimes. Like, which is mind boggling. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but you this fan base loves like that guy, like that hustles to first base on the ground out, like stuff like that, and like the Pete Roses, like the Larry Ball was even on this team with Schmidt. Like these guys, like just they love that. Like he can hit 220, and if he's hustling the first base like on the ground out, they absolutely love that. Mike Schmidt wasn't that guy. Like what I'm saying, like he was not that guy, and people always the big criticism that fans had, at that time was it looked like he didn't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think when you get labeled that, that's tough to shake off. Like, that's really hard to shake off in a city like Philadelphia. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think a big part of it also was that, like, if he struck out in
But
big moments, he just doesn't give a
but my
shit.
thing is, and yeah, I think you're right, and I'm glad. Like it's a good segue into he looked like he didn't. He was Captain Cool,
Right,
all those
right.
things. One thing I say in all sports, you know, defense is that not that offense doesn't have effort too, but if you're playing D, like that's what it is. That's all desire, like
At
to
third
me,
base, at that. You know what I'm
at
saying?
third
Like,
base.
that's
So
tough
for
position to play, man.
okay, if you look, even though like we know it's BS, but if he was like a so-so defender and he had the same offensive numbers, maybe I could understand you saying that a little bit more.
Right.
But to me, when he's doing these barehanded, like just doing all these things like that on defense alone, forget the crazy home runs. Just on defense alone, that's all he was doing was hustling.
Bad. Right.
Like that's what he was doing. Even if he looks cool, he's moving his ass up and down that third base. Like he's moving to get these to throw these guys. I mean, if you watch anyone who hasn't seen it, highlights of Mike Schmidt playing defense. I mean, he's winging that ball from the third baseline to first base and getting runners out just in the nick of time. Like how do you not call it the definition of hustling? And that's just what bothers me. So what? Like it's not his fault. They made it AstroTurf, so what? He doesn't have grass to get it all greened up, and I don't
Right.
know. That's not his fault. But that was a big knock on him, which is another thing that is insane. And you're right by the Philadelphia fan base.
Because it's such an easy, like the clutch thing, and you attach that, like it's not like he looks like he's not hustling or bustling it down the line. Like that's such an easy like cop out to like hold on to and like be able to like boo somebody or like talk shit on a player. Like that happens. That's like the number one thing now on like social media, where if you want to attack a guy, oh, he just looks like he doesn't care. He doesn't look like he's into the game. Like what? Like this dude is a professional athlete. Like now, I'm not saying they all like are that they all care and all that stuff. I get you have some guys that really just are there for a paycheck, but this dude is not that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like just because he makes the game look easy, that does not mean he's not hustling. That does not mean that he doesn't give a shit. Like it's just he's that great. You know what I'm saying? Like so for a guy, we mentioned this earlier, Deremy, like for a guy that maybe need to dive down the line and make that dive and catch and then throw a guy out, but he's so great that he's already in position where it's just like boom, a shot down the line. He's already there that he doesn't have to dive. Like it just makes it. He was so great that he made the tough play look routine, and that's not a knock. That's like a piece of the greatness that we should respect. And
No,
I'm getting mad.
no. Because uh, Philadelphia fans are lucky now because for a long time, nationally and locally, one of the reputation that Philadelphia fans has, one of the big things that was brought up in one of the black eyes in baseball or black eyes in Philadelphia sports, fandom, it was how they treated the two guys, Mike Schmidt and the guy, his mentor, Dick Allen. That
Yep.
was looked at for so long like an embarrassment, like that's on that side of when like the national people say Philly fans are rude or wrong. They would bring up,
Or
look at how
racist.
you treat or racist. I was gonna keep it to Mike Schmidt this time. Trust me, we can do Dick Allen. Um,
Yes.
but one of the black eyes is look how you treated the best player in franchise history, and it was compared because a lot of people knew what the media and how Ted Williams' relationship was
Yes.
with Boston fans and media. That was compared right up there with that, like how the Philadelphia fans and media treated Mike Schmidt.
Yeah. Yeah. That. Yeah. I know about all that. I mean, obviously, a lot of us probably do, like who listening to this episode, but like what they did with Dick Allen and stuff like that. But Mike Schmidt was their guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was one of
He was
them. And
white.
yeah, he was one of them. And like it just blows me away, man. Like it really, really does. And again, I just think it goes to that like badge of honor that you mentioned earlier, Deremy, where it's like, yeah, I booed him. I booed Donovan McNabb when he was drafted. Like, look how stupid all those guys look that went to that draft and booed the shit out of McNabb. That they probably, I would say, a third of them, maybe even more, never even saw him play in Syracuse. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and look, I'm not saying McNabb is Dan Marino. He was the best quarterback in franchise history, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, so all the like, it's just like a badge of honor, like sports radio and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, we boo these guys. They deserve to boo them. Like, it's like last year with Trey Turner, where they did like the standing ovation, and next thing you know, he's hitting like 900 for the rest of the year. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like now it's like they're talking shit on that. Now he's an MVP candidate. Like 2 weeks ago, they wanted to trade him. Like, it's just, I get sports, and I know a lot of fan bases are like that, especially like, you know, the fan bases like the East Coast fans, like, you know, in Boston and New York, they're so intelligent and know every sport that, you know, they think they know better than like the players and coaches, and they criticize all that stuff. But here, man, to do that to this guy is, I don't think you put Mike Schmidt, and I think he even said this, like, you put me in LA, you put me in other places, man, like, I'm not going to have to deal with none of this stuff. And
He
that's
did. He did say
sad.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sad. Like, and because he's right, though. 100% right.
He was right, and I still feel it's just odd, like, because there's a mix of, I get, like, right, your fandom or how you relate is a part of like how you are in the public eye, being a public figure. But it's just when you're the greatest, I feel like you should be put on a pedestal that is. I love Jason Kelsey, and you know a lot of this kind of sparked it in me watching his retirement speech and how emotional, and it was great. And Jason Kelsey will be a Hall of Famer, and he was a part of the first Super Bowl championship for the Eagles, and he had that Mummers Day parade speech, or not Mummers, that Mummers outfit Super Bowl
Right.
parade speech. That's all well and good, but it's like you can't put Jason Kelsey on the same level as Mike Schmidt.
Nah.
Like, you just can't.
Absolutely not.
And Jason Kelsey was great as a football player, but he's not the equivalent of Mike. And I just feel like Mike Schmidt is a name that should always just lit, and not because he's doing the games on the weekends sometimes. Like, that's almost like, I hate to say it, like pedestrian. I hate to say that, but
I hate that he's there. Like, I
yeah,
love the guy. I don't like that he's there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's the organization, like, that's reaching, you know, and he's, to be fair, he's not even good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, he's not.
I love Mike Schmidt, like, and obviously we're doing an episode on him, and we're talking about how underrated he is. But as a broadcaster, he's definitely not underrated. But that's not his thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's just there hanging out, chilling, like, just talking baseball, and they're just asking him a bunch of questions, you know? So,
But no one else. I feel like what other team their best player does that?
it's not many,
Like, it's
man.
almost like a way to, like, he's like an like to get him talking, or like put him out there. Like John Kruk, and John Kruk was a very good player, but like, yeah, John Kruk, the Phillies announcer, that, like, and not that it's a good job. I'm not saying, but it's just like John Kruk was a good player. He wasn't the best player, nowhere near the best player in franchise history.
He was
He was
not
an
even the best
all-star,
player on that team. Like, you
not the
know?
best player on '93 team. So, like, but that fits though. But I can't
Right.
think of like Derek Jeter doing like the Yankee games on Sundays. Sundays with
Man.
Jeet.
Yeah.
Jeet with Sundays. You know, Big Poppy. Like, what team does that? I don't probably in any sport. Imagine the Lakers having Magic Johnson do that,
Yeah, I know.
or Kareem.
I know. They're reaching. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that Phillies broadcast is terrible overall anyway, but it's just, it's just like I don't know, a spark. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they think it is. It's just, it's not, it's not a good look for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know he's just probably there, like, whatever, they're paying me, I'm going to show up. Like, but it's just, he's too great for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just too great. It's frustrating, man. Like, it's very frustrating. Like, looking at this amazing player that we had and how he was treated while he was playing, how he got treated after he started playing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and even today, like people still they talk about him. They know he's great, but like we've been mentioning in this episode, Deremy, it's just like, yeah, he was great. Let's move on.
It's
What about
just
Chase Utley? What about Chase Utley? Like, come on, man. Like,
well, and the thing is though, Chase Utley was beloved here, and now he did get his uniform dirty, but he played like Schmidt. Not as good as Schmidt, but he played, and
nowhere
he
near
was
as
not
good.
he didn't show emotion. Like he wasn't like a rah rah guy, but
Right.
Chase Utley was beloved. Jimmy Rollins, I feel like, sticks out more with people. It just is a sad thing that I feel, and the sad part is the relationship has improved so much
I know.
post his
I know.
career. So that's how bad it was that the man had to make like a peace offering during his Hall of Fame induction speech in 1995. Philly fan, can we put the past away? I'm like,
That's
geez, like
embarrassing, man.
that's
That's
so
that's
bad.
legit embarrassing. Like, because I think, and it is bad. You're right there. I mean, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. It's embarrassing, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's I get so frustrated. Look, I love my city. I love where I grew up, man. I love my teams. I know you do too, Deremy. And it's just, but when I hear the stuff, like people get outraged about, oh, the national media talking about Philly sports. No, they're right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a reason why they're saying all this stuff. And I know like they bring up the Santa Claus thing and like the JD Drew, they throwing batteries at them, like, you know, stuff like that. But it's this is where I get like, no, like this is embarrassing as a fan, like that
No, there's yeah.
we went through this.
That's what's bad is people get annoyed with the Santa Claus story, and I never understood that because I'm like, that makes you look better because that's such a goofy story.
Yeah.
Like, why do you guys hold on to that? I'm like, there's so many things that they talk about how you treated Jackie Robinson, how you treated Dick Allen, what you did to Mike Schmidt.
How he treated Charles Barkley was
I
another
treated
one.
Charles
Like,
Barkley, or cheering when Michael Irvin had like a broken neck on the field, and I was live there for that. How embarrassing that was to be a
yep.
part of and to see that. Those are the things I'm like, you're lucky that they just keep mentioning that snowball thing with Santa. Like that helps you out because
Right.
there's other stuff. There's no coming back from.
Right. Like that one Dallas game where they were throwing snowballs at all the Dallas players and Jimmy Johnson, they were running off the field. That's worse than the Santa Claus thing. You know what I mean? Like, and again, the only reason I bring up the Santa Claus thing is because again, like that's the first thing people talk about. But man, like, you're right. I'm that's so spot on. Like, thank God that's what they talk about, and they don't talk about, man, y'all shitted on your best player. You know what I mean, throughout his career, or like all those other times that you're mentioning. You know, so it's terrible, man. Like I sometimes I hate being a Philly fan, but I have no choice.
No, it was one of those things that made no sense to me as a kid hearing these stories, and that no one could give me a good answer. The best would have with these strikeouts, but I just think, how can we fix this though? Because when I've talked to a few people, let them know we're going to do this episode, who aren't Philadelphia people, they were like, "Oh man, Mike, he's so excited because like he's so underrated, and then like he doesn't get talked about." I just look like how can we kind of change this for somebody who I would love to have these Hall of Fame voters, writers, these historians really sit down and tell me why Mike Schmidt is not a top 10 all-time player.
Yeah, like I mean, you take away pictures as well, like because even that, like, there's a handful of pictures I might put over Mike Schmidt if I had to pick like greatest players, but there's not a lot. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know what their argument will be. Like, I that's a good point too. There, I mean, like, it will be an odd argument. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna look at you like a little sideways because there shouldn't be an argument. Like, you should just be like, yeah, you're right. Like, he is a top 10 player of all time. Let's just plug him in at third base on this all-century team, and whatever you want to call it, and you know, and move on. But if you don't, like, there's no list that you can have him not on there, right? Like, if we were to just create an
Right.
all-time team, like, he's on there, so why isn't he in like everyone's top 10? It's a good
No,
question.
I think, and I will put Stan Musial ahead of Mike Schmidt,
Yes.
but Stan Musial was just easy as can be. Wasn't a limelight guy.
Nope.
I just say, don't tell me that you have to be this boisterous personality to be remembered. That's not true. And to be
It's not true.
put on that rightful place where you really should be, you don't have to just be a big personality, because Stan Musial got a lot of praise, rightfully so. He was not a big personality. He was very as plain as you could be as far as excitement, but
But Stan
great player.
Musial played in probably the best baseball city, who were the fans in St. Louis, where the fans respect their players. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's, if Stan Musial played in Philly, it'd probably be a different story. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Maybe,
you
yeah,
put Mike
yeah.
Schmidt in St. Louis, oh my God. Like, they'd have a statue out there for Mike Schmidt. You know, it's like,
Do we have a statue for him here?
I just, as soon as I said that, I was like, does Mike
I
Schmidt have a
think we
statue?
do. I feel like there is a Schmidt. Is
I
there not?
think there might be at one in Citizens Bank. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a Schmidt statue. I
Yeah,
feel
there
like
is.
it.
There is. It better be. There is. I think there is. Yeah.
Yeah. You got me thinking now.
I
But
know. I'm gonna look.
but I think it comes down to this. You asked a question to me. We were trying to outline this episode earlier today, and
There is one.
okay, yeah, I thought there was one. Where do you rank him as far as misunderstood great players? Like on that lit, like where do you have him at?
He's definitely up there for sure. Like he's a top 10, top 5 for sure. I mean, in just overall sports, yeah, he's definitely, you got him. He's high on that list. Because again, like we've been talking about how great he was in his whole career, and for people not even to mention his name when it comes to all-time great players, I'm trying to even think of like a comparison. And I know the Frank Thomas one was a good comparison, but Frank Thomas was, like you mentioned, like a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it's just like I don't really think Frank Thomas, like, he wasn't the best first baseman of all time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, man, like that's I'm trying to compare Mike Schmidt to that.
Well,
To somebody.
because kind of why I didn't want to like say like a Dick Allen, Bill Russell, because as ignorant and wrong and hateful as it is, we know what we can say. It was racism.
Right.
Like your racist, thinking is why they Philly fans write that with Dick Allen, or why Boston fans did that with Bill Russell. There's not a clear cut thing with Mike Schmidt. Like you can't say that it's like it's like really random. Like, and I think that's where it kind of ranks higher, because I'm like,
Yeah.
other people, even if like the perception is wrong or is hateful or whatever, well, that's why they did that. It's like I still have not been given a really good answer to why they did this. Even a YouTube video talking about this. It's like Philadelphia Baseball History. That's the YouTube channel, and they were kind of just talking about like all these guys who were in that era growing up watching him, and they're like, did we treat Mike Schmidt right? And none of them had a good answer. They all admitted to, like, when they were at the games, they were like in high school in Schmidt's prime, they booed him. They're like, yeah, we booed. He struck out. And some of them were like, well, when anyone struck out, we booed. But it's like, he wasn't anyone. He was the best player in baseball at the time,
Right.
and the best player in your franchise history, and you booed him. So
Right.
no one could give you a good answer.
No, there's not, like, there is no answer. That's why. Like, it's just stupidity. You know what I'm saying? Like, because even that run in like that 80s team, like there's guys a lot, like very similar to like the Raw Street Bullies and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of those guys still hang around in Philly, still live in the area, stuff like that. You think, I feel like Larry Bow is more popular than Mike Schmidt. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah.
Like, and that's, and Larry Bow was a very good player. You know what I'm saying? Like, but he was nowhere in the same, not even in the same stratosphere as Mike Schmidt, but it's the certain player that this fan base gravitates to. If you're a guy who's, and look, I grew up in this city, you know what I'm saying? So I know, like, I can speak to this for facts. Like, like if you're a guy who's like a Bobby Abreu, they hated Bobby Abreu. You know what I'm saying? Like, And he was just, why? Because it looked like he had the he didn't care thing on him. And, and he was just putting up numbers after numbers, where to the point where they're debating if he's a Hall of Famer today or not. I don't think he is, but, that's a small debate out there, but he caught the same wrath where it was just like, he just doesn't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just don't understand it. Like, in a time that he came in a time where they were super terrible, man. Like, and he was like he was their only all-star. Like, and, again, I'm not comparing a Brady to Schmidt, but it's just like, when you get that label, especially in a city like Philly, Boston, New York, like a lot of these East Coast teams, you know what I'm saying, or fan bases, you would not shake that. You would not shake that label. And that's a shame.
Yeah. And I think for me, I'm looking at it as I believe it's great to give props to the scrappy guy, the underdog, the guy who
Because you need them.
did
You need those
the
guys.
little thing. So when a fan base or when the sports community gives props that guy up, I love it, right? But I feel like when you hit a certain status, it doesn't matter if you're media friendly or not. It doesn't matter, and we can look at so many things. Hey, Philadelphia's a big market, so it's not going to be New York. It's not like it's it's not Seattle. No offense, but it's not Seattle.
Right,
Like,
Kansas City or something.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Philadelphia's a big market, so like it gets attention, but it's also like Joe DiMaggio wasn't the most media savvy guy,
No.
but we didn't forget him. I mentioned Stan. A lot of baseball greats weren't forgotten. So, like, why is Mike Schmidt, who you can make a case is the second greatest living player currently of all time, and I feel like people probably won't say that if Willie Mays passes away before Mike Schmidt, you won't hear him be called the greatest living player, which I've heard for Hank Aaron, for Willie Mays, for Ted Williams. These guys had greatest living player. I don't think Mike Schmidt's going to get that, and that's a shame.
He will not get that. Like, he will definitely not get that, and that is a shame, and because he will be that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he will be the greatest player, at the time. Like, if God forbid that does happen to Willie Mays, which it eventually happens to all of us, right? Like, so, like, he will not get that accolade, that kudo, even if it is an accolade. But it's just, he will not be looked at like that, And there's, again, we wanted to give you an answer at this episode. There is no answer, to be honest. It's just like one of these sports mysteries where it's just, this guy got a raw deal, and he's still an amazing, amazing player.
So, Jose, it's fun to talk about Mike Schmidt.
I got mad, dude. I legit got mad. Like, I'm still mad. I don't know why, but
no, it was a conversation for me that's funny. Like, I had in my household all the time and talked about it. And my mom was not from here. She's from South Carolina. So for her, it was when she would poke holes at why she couldn't stand Philadelphia fans, she would talk about that. She moved. My parents got married in summer of '76. So she really saw like the peak of like Mike Schmidt's come up and like his power to Philly's heyday, and she couldn't, from South Carolina to Philly, couldn't understand why they're booing. My mom loves sports, so she knew baseball, why they're booing their best player and treating him like this. And she would say that to later on to like Philly fans, like, y'all aren't good fans. Look how you treated Mike Schmidt.
right.
Like, I heard my mom say that as I was growing up, when she would argue with other like Philly fans. Look how you treated Mike Schmidt. So it's a lesson to like appreciate greatness while you have it.
Absolutely. It's a black guy that's never going to go away for this city. I don't care what they do even with this team now, like, like they have a really good team. The Phillies have a good team, man. Like, they'll be contender. They'll probably most likely be in the postseason again, and we better respect that, because for a long, I used to tell this, and I used to say this when in like the early 2000s, and the Drollins, Howard, Utley team, like, I used to be like, man, y'all young guys, like, at the time, I don't know how old I was, 20 something, whatever. I was like, man, y'all have no idea. Like, I had one winning season as a Phillies fan, and that was 93, and that was one of the most heartbreaking losses of all time,
Yeah.
And y'all, we have this run going now, and this is all y'all know. y'all lucky, man. You know what I mean? And it's now the same thing. Like this run is, if this is all you know, then you're very lucky because this is not what this organization is about. But recently it has been a little bit better, but it's just, and you had this one guy and y'all treated him like shit. I can't get over that. I'm sorry.
It's really bad. It doesn't make any sense. Like, so I guess to answer this, it has to be top five.
Yeah, I
Like,
can't
just
think of too many other
worst.
guys. Like
Because I think of people, but like I can say what it was. I say
right. Because I was
racist.
thinking
Like,
like Kareem, like you know what I'm saying, like guys like, and I was like, yeah, but it was for a reason. You know what I mean? It was just pure racism. For
and
those
Kareem
guys.
is a good answer. Kareem is a good answer. Moses is a good answer.
Yeah, yeah,
He was misunderstood, but Mike Schmidt, it just makes no. It's like I don't know that one reason.
yeah,
So it's something to behold. But Jose, this was fun, and
yeah,
it
man.
was fun to bring up. And we talked about, hopefully made a case for Mike Schmidt because he's still alive with us, and I want more. I want to see more books on Mike Schmidt. I want to see more like documentaries or a documentary on him. I just want to see a lot of stuff on this guy because he deserves it, and I think he's someone that if people really looked at his highlights and really sat back, to your point at the beginning of the show, it's going to be an amazing story. People will be shocked, I feel.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully that does get done, like you said before he's gone. But he's 77 too. I was surprised by that. But no, he deserves that and much much more. And again, this isn't like our Philly like bias like speaking here. Like this guy was an all time great, amazing, whatever adjective you want to add to that player. And he rightfully deserves all of this stuff. Like what we're talking about today. So hopefully this things start to turn a little bit. I know they turn with the fan base a little bit, but that might be a little too late at this point.
So please let us know what you think and where do you rank Michael Jack Schmidt? Do you think he's properly rated? Do you think he's like, yeah, he's in the 20s and no, he shouldn't be in that upper echelons with some of these other hallowed names? Or do you agree with us and think that Mike Schmidt should be talked about on the same level with some of the greatest names in baseball history? You guys let us know. You can hit us up on Twitter or X at Bigger Game Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at Bigger Game Pod. So for the hardest working man in show business, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose.
Peace.